tonight. And so, it is my privilege to introduce my oldest daughter. I'm so proud of her. Come on, baby. Come on, get up here and preach them happy, or at least say something to them that they're about to listen to. Amen. Love you, baby.
First of all, I almost quit 5 times today, so you guys this is a treat. I am. You know, DeAndre, you know. I did it for you and for Amos. That's okay. No, I really am doing it for all of you guys. But I'm not gonna lie, I almost quit. But I feel like this is a good lesson for you guys, because the lesson I had to learn is, even if you don't want to do something, God's gonna make you do it anyway. So I never wanted to be up there leading music. That was not something, and now I love it, of course, but I never wanted to do that. I'm not a naturally bold person, but things fell into place where I was kind of thrown into that position, and I think if I wasn't thrown into things, I would never do them, because that's just how I am. But today, first of all, my dad keeps saying I'm going to be preaching, and I'm like, oh, can we stop with the preaching? That's a lot of pressure. Let's just say I'm going to talk to you guys. Because that's what I've been trying to do. I'm just going to talk about some stuff that I've been dealing with the past few months, actually my entire life, and that I've actually just been studying these past few months. And that is doubt. And, when I say doubt, that's so broad. But what I really mean is self-doubt, which is like doubting what you can do and your abilities, and then how that relates to ultimately doubting God. So, as I told you, I almost quit today. Why? Because I doubted myself. To be quite honest with you, I'm still doubting myself as I stand up here. I'm just going to be real. I'm going to guess that you guys have all had to do something like this. I remember when I was in high school and I was terrified to get up and do class projects. And then I would get up there and I would do them and I'd be like shaking, and they'd say, you did so well, you can't even tell you were nervous. But inside I was crying. So that's where that self-doubt comes in, where you guys can probably relate. I'm sure you've all had to do something like that. DeAndre, I know you've had to do something like that. And you doubted yourself. Well, you got through it though, huh? Did you get through it? Are you here? Are you here today? He's gone. Okay. So my question that I started with was, why do we doubt ourselves in the first place when there are so many places in the Bible that say, do not doubt, God's got your back and stuff. And then, so I searched it, and I thought it was interesting, because when I searched what does the Bible say about self-doubt, it didn't say anything about ourselves. It all came up as scriptures that were talking about trusting God. And that got me thinking, wait a second, if I doubt myself, does that mean that I don't trust God? That I'm doubting Him too? And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that, yeah, a little bit. Because if we truly believe everything that God says He is in the Bible, then we would have no problem being like, yeah, I can get up there and speak. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, right? Amen. But apparently, we don't believe that very well. Guys, this is my first time speaking. You're going to make me get onto you here. Oh. Do you not care about me at all? Look at Amos. He's being so good back there with his fan. Oh, you guys. Okay. And I actually do have scriptures. Second thing I want to say about me being up here, I have no idea what I'm doing. So, I'll read a scripture, I'll just talk, we'll get through it. We'll figure out some way to get to the end. Okay, thank you, Amos, thank you. Oh, thank you, Taylor. I'm just used to Amos talking, so, it just comes naturally. First I want to read John 15:5, and I like to read the New Living Translation, so don't get mad at me. But they didn't have that in the computer, so I'm going to read it on my phone. And it says, Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And that was one of the scriptures that came up when I searched self-doubt. And that was actually one of the ones that kind of talked about yourself, you know? It doesn't, but all of them relate back to the only way you can do something is through God. So none of them say, you can do something because you make yourself get up and do it, right? Which is part of it. But personally, if I didn't think that this is what I was supposed to be up here doing, I would have been long gone. I would not be here right now because this is not come natural to me. So it's like it's part of a bigger problem. And so now I'm going to read 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10. It says, each time he said, my grace is all you need, my power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. That's my mantra for tonight. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. When I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm going to do a good job. That's what I have to tell myself as I'm up here. But anyway, so when I looked up self-doubt scriptures, it all came up back to trusting God. And I kind of hit me a little bit. I was like, wait, because I think we've all been there. I don't know, you guys probably have been there, where you're worried about something, you're praying about something, and you say something like, I'm only worried because I know I can't do it. I know you can do it, God. I'm not worried about you doing it, but it's just because I can't do it. I'm just worried about myself. Have you guys ever said that before? I have said it before. But that's kind of a cop-out, don't you think? Like when you think about that, if the Bible tells us that we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength, then should we really be worried about our own abilities when it comes to asking God for something? No way, Jose. Is that just an excuse? Yes way, Jose, that's right. It is. That's what that's how I've kind of lived my life for a long time, because every time I step out of my house, I doubt myself. When I say hi to somebody, I'm like, oh, was that weird? Like, oh, should I have shaken their hand? Oh, my hand was probably sweaty. Oh no, they probably think I'm weird. Every time I do anything, I'm worried about it. And same. See, I think we all have that in us. You too? Yeah. Well, but should we? That's the question. Should we doubt ourselves in everything we do if we really believe that God is going to take care of us, like the Bible tells us? No. That was the wrong answer, Amos. You gotta listen. Okay. So the answer is no. We shouldn't doubt ourselves, even though I know it's the natural thing to do, right? Something comes along and it seems way too big for us to handle, and naturally, yeah, we probably should be doubting ourselves, because if something's too big for us to handle, then it's a little scary. But when we have God behind us, He's bigger than everything, right? That's what the Bible says, at least. Hey, Heavenly, do you want to come sit over here by Miss Heike? Come on. All right, I'm just going to keep going if somebody can help me out, please, because... Okay. The bigger question that I had was, is doubting God wrong? Because if we take this thing that says, I doubt myself and I shouldn't, that stems back to me doubting God, right? Because if we had full, complete, 100% trust in God, we would never, ever be worried about what we could do. The Bible tells us so many times that God is bigger than anything we're ever going to face.
Amen.
And that He's bigger than anything that may come against us, that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. And if we really believe that, would we be scared to give a speech in front of a class or come up on stage and talk to you people? Would we really be afraid of that? I don't think so. And so I was like, wait a second, if that's doubting God, then every single person has doubted God at least once in their life, probably multiple times, probably at least once a day. And And I was like, wait a second, I thought doubting God was a sin. I thought it was bad. And then I started to read in Psalms, and I found this passage, and it kind of, I don't know, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. So I decided that, okay, if we all doubt in God at some point, because we do, trying to do things yourself, ultimately that's doubting God's abilities, right? So I found this passage, it's Psalms 13, 1 through 6, and it's, of course, you guys know, the Psalms were written by David, you know that? And if you look at them as kind of, they're really personal, actually. They're kind of like his personal, like if you have a journal and you write your poems and your feelings in them, you know, your feelings journal. That's what Psalms is. David was writing his hardships, his trials, and he wrote them all down in Psalms. And this one in particular says, "Oh Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand? Turn and answer me, O Lord my God. Restore the sparkle to my eyes, or I will die. Don't let my enemies gloat, saying, we have defeated him. Don't let them rejoice at my downfall, but I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you have rescued me. I will sing to the Lord because he is good to me." And that is a beautiful passage. Of course, if you just read it, you can be like, wow, David was a really good writer, right? But if you look into it, David was going through some really hard times. And does this, when I read this, did it say, I'm not worried about it? It's okay. Is that what it said? No, he said, God, where are you? What's going on? I thought that I was doing the right thing. I thought I was on your path. Where are you? Clearly, you're not here with me. I don't feel you here with me. I'm reading between the lines, okay? It's interpretation. He's like, why are my enemies constantly getting the upper hand? Why are they beating me? I thought if you were on my side, I was going to win everything. Why is this happening? Why? And he's questioning God. But this is the important part, because I think we all have those days or periods in our life where we're like, God's not with me. Is God even real? Have you guys thought about that before? Is this even real, right? I have. Yeah, you go through that point in your life where you have to decide for yourself, right? That's probably the point that you're about to get to, because I know it happened for me when I graduated high school. So you guys are probably getting around that time. But there comes a point when you have to figure out what you believe for yourself. Not what people come up here and tell you to believe, but what you really and truly believe and what you have experienced in your own life, and that's how you're going to find out. So this is a little tip for you guys. David didn't come to God and say, everything's okay. He didn't write that down because he didn't feel that. You don't have to come to God and pretend to feel something that you don't. Because guess what? He already knows. So coming to God and saying, I feel great. What is that called? Lying. That's lying. And that's ultimately worse than just coming and being like, are you even there? Hello? Haven't heard you in like 3 months. Are you there? You know? What? What'd you say? Amos. Okay. But when you come to God, and you're going to have that moment in your life when you're like, is this even real? And you come to God and you are questioning everything that you've ever learned and everything that you've ever been told. But this is how you should do it. So David comes and he's venting basically to God, and he's saying, I feel so down, I feel horrible, I feel like you're not in my corner, I feel like I'm by myself, my enemies are defeating me, I don't know where to go from here, I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe not, I don't know where I'm at. And at the end, he said, but I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you have rescued me. I will sing to the Lord because he is good to me. So even though David felt like God wasn't with him at that moment, and he felt like he was completely lost in this really bad situation that he was in, he ends his whole, this is a prayer, a poem, he ends it with, but I trust you. And I think, or what I thought for a long time, was that one day you'll just wake up and trust God. You'll have it all figured out. And what I've had to learn is that every single day you wake up, you have to decide to trust God.
Amen.
Because if you think you're going to wake up one day and be like, yeah, I have 0 doubts. I feel great. I'm not worried about anything in my life. Everything's going great. Then you're going to be disappointed. Because God takes away all of He gives you such great joy. He takes away all the pain and the heartache. But to do that, you have to fully commit yourself to Him. And that's the hardest part. It really is. Because sometimes you're like, yeah, I fully committed myself to God. And then you feel that little piece in your heart that's like, He'll never find me here. Hiding in the corner. I'm safe over here. And you never fully gave your heart to God, because there's always a little piece that you have to choose to give up. When you get saved, which a lot of you guys did get saved a couple weeks ago, right? Or some of you at least. When you get saved, of course, as we describe it, Jesus comes and lives in your heart. But more importantly, you're giving up. It symbolizes you giving up your heart to Him. And whenever you don't give your full heart to Him, and whenever you are trying to hide things, which is impossible as we know, that's when you start to be uncomfortable. And you start to have worries and fears, and you start to think, maybe this isn't real because I prayed for this and it didn't happen. And God's over here like, hey, I've been telling you this. You just got to give up. You got to stop doing this stuff, and then, you'll get what you prayed for. You're not ready for it yet. But we can't listen. We can't hear whenever our minds and our hearts are so clouded with those things that we shouldn't have in there in the first place. So I'm in college. I go to East Central in Ada, and I am an English education major. And it's kind of hard to be an English education major and be a Christian, because almost every single thing I've ever read comes back around to the author was talking about faith versus reason. So we're talking about that now, which means you guys know some history. There was one point in time when the church they thought they were doing the right thing, I'm sure, but they were persecuting people and killing people, and whenever someone had a different idea than them, they would kill them or exile them, and there was a really bad time for the church. So there were a lot of people that were writing things that were saying you shouldn't be religious or whatever. But oddly enough, I was in a class, and he told us a quote that said there is no such thing as untested virtue, which basically means if your faith isn't tested, then it's not real. So if you say you believe in God and you're a Christian and you are saved, and I believe, and you do what you're supposed to do, but you never have an idea of your own about it, you never question it yourself, you never look into it yourself, is that faith going to be very strong? No, it's not going to be strong, because doubting and trials and struggles, that's what grows your faith. That period between, I watch a lot of Stephen Furtick, I don't know if you guys know who he is, online. He's the pastor of Elevation Church, the big church, and he said something the other day, I was watching, and it said, the period between the promise and fulfillment is when your faith grows the most. So that period is called the waiting period, and that's usually when people give up, that waiting period. But it's those people that get up like David, and I believe that David was going through his waiting period right here, because he gets up and he's like, I don't know what's I can't see the light at the end of this tunnel, but today I choose to trust you. And he says that in every Psalms, if he starts with something bad that's going on in his life, he ends it with, but God, I trust you. And I think that's the key to doubt. So my whole point about doubt is, first of all, doubting is going to happen. It is a natural thing. We're human, we have free will. That's what God gave us, was free will. So we have the free will to think, we have the free will to make decisions, we have the free will to follow God or not follow God, and we're going to have to make those decisions. Sorry to tell you, you're going to have to make a decision. It's natural, and it will happen at some point, but doubt makes your faith ultimately grow stronger. If you don't doubt, then you never have to look for yourself, and you never have to, put your faith to the test and say, there's no way that I could ever do this, so I have to give it to God. If you never have to do that, then you're just going to go through life. You may, and I'm sure there are Christians like this, of course, you may be saved and you may be going to heaven, but you don't have that strong faith, that great relationship that you could have with God because you never fully tested your faith. You never fully stepped out on something that you thought was from God, that you thought you heard God say. You never fully stepped out and said, I'll do this, even though I know I'm not capable of it myself. That's something that everybody has to do in order to grow your faith, and whether you want to or not, you'll come to that point in your life when you have to make a decision. And a lot of times we choose not to, because we think we're not going to be good at it. It's not going to fit the life we've painted in our minds. That's a big part of it. It's especially if it's switching your mindset to something different. If it's not what you wanted it to be, it's really, really hard to step out in faith. It's not easy, but we have to make that decision. I also want to talk about the famous doubter in the Bible, Doubting Thomas, as everybody calls him. I think he gets a bad rep, you know? So Jesus, if you guys don't know who Doubting Thomas is, that's what they call him. I'm just going to call him Thomas because I feel like that's a little mean. So Jesus has died at this point, and he resurrected, and he came in. All the disciples saw him, but Thomas wasn't there. So when Thomas gets there, they're like, hey, we just saw Jesus, he's alive. And Thomas is like, there's no way. I don't believe it. He's like, unless I see him myself, I'm not going to believe it. And I think Jesus says something that can really, can really help us in our path, because there are going to be times when the people around you are doubting, and you are there to pick them up. And Jesus said, you believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me. So that's why Thomas gets this bad rep, because Jesus, he has to see Jesus to believe that he's back. Even though he followed Jesus and he should have just believed him, right? But I think that we all would have kind of reacted in the same way. That's kind of a crazy thing to think about. People run up to you and say, hey, they're back from the dead. Is that going to be easy to accept? No, not at all. And I think people, we're so far removed from that because we didn't walk with Jesus. So we don't know what it would have been like when he rose from the dead. But I think I wouldn't have believed it either if I didn't see it. But I love the way Jesus responds, and he simply tells him, hey, that's great, you believe now, but it's better to believe through faith than it is by actually seeing something. And so for himself, David recognized and freely admitted his doubt, but he made the conscious decision to give that doubt over to God's power. So for ourselves, when we're feeling doubtful about things or we're worried about things and we shouldn't be, we have to make that decision to give full control to God, because that's the only way you're going to get through that. But for others, Jesus showed correction with love and understanding, but he did still show correction. So loving people doesn't necessarily mean that you just go along with everything that they do. There's room for correction. Jesus always corrected his disciples, even though he loved them very, very much. So there's going to come a point in your life when you guys have to decide for yourselves to make that decision to give up your whole heart, your whole life to God. or not. But I can almost promise you that there's going to come another time when you're surrounded by people or someone that is going through that decision too. And if we look at David, we can see how to do it. You're truthful and you make a decision, and you are honest with God about your position, because he wants to talk to you. He knows what you're going through, but he likes it when you are honest with him. And then Jesus showed correction to his friend, but he showed it through love. He said, hey, that's great, but next time, do it this way. This is the right way. And that's what Jesus did most of the time. So we have to recognize that doubt in ourselves ultimately comes from a doubt in God's true ability, and we have to make that decision every single day. So what I want to kind of leave you with is, if you're ever going through a moment in your life when you have to make that decision and you're like, or you are doubting God, the position God put you in, the people he surrounded you with, whatever, just remember that that's gonna happen. That's natural. You don't have to feel bad about doubting. What you need to do is tell God about your doubt and decide to trust him anyway. So whenever you're in that position, whenever that may come, whenever you have to make that decision, I don't know if you guys, maybe you already have had that come to you, but whenever you have to make that decision, don't feel bad about the way you feel. I always thought that doubt was wrong, that you were automatically going to trust God if you believed in him, that you were automatically not going to have any questions and you shouldn't have any questions, but that's not true. You have to decide for yourself, and you have to find out the truth for yourself. Through God, through the Bible, through what we say up here. And you have to make that decision for yourself. And I guess that's all I have for you today. But thank you.